everybody, and welcome to our panel discussion. I'll just start off by introducing you to our wonderful panel. We have Jeff Ross, we have Stuart Fowler from Panasonic, Karen Silk from Westpac, Andy Booth, who you've all seen already from Solarcity, and Sir Stephen Tyndall. So as I said, this is kind of an open forum. If you guys have questions, please let us know. We're going to cover off a little bit of the stuff that Andy's talked about, some of the questions that's raised, but also some of the kind of bigger picture stuff around renewable energy, climate change, and how important that is for all of us. Obviously off the back of this really exciting announcement today of the launch of Solar Zero. So Stephen, I want to kick off with you. There's kind of this perception that, you know, down in little old New Zealand we can't really make a difference. What's your take on that?
Well, I think we absolutely can. Here we are launching rockets. I think really the only pure private rocket company in the world. So we definitely can. And I think if we look at what's happening with climate change today, this is part of the solution. We've got transport, which is going to be a really big issue, and that could be taken care of by hydrogen with the bigger end, with the buses and trucks. And you've got, you know, farming, which obviously does also affect New Zealand. So that can actually be taken care of with the right technology. So, you know, New Zealand has proved in the past we can do it, and I'm sure we can again.
Jeff, I've got a question for you. You talk about how being clean and green gives us a competitive advantage. What do you mean by that, and what role does renewable energy play in that?
Well, so much of New Zealand's earnings are linked to our position on the world and our credentials and sustainability and environment. So if you look at tourism, dairy, you know, horticulture, fish, forestry, wine, beer, you know, and the list goes on. Our purity perceptions and our environmental perceptions across all those products is really important, because if our credentials are strong there, it's going to drive greater value and greater earnings. So you can't, in the whole, you know, environmental picture now, you can't just do one piece. You've got to look at the whole chain. So energy is obviously a huge part of that. And so if we're not making steps to improve, you know, our energy source and the renewability of our energy, then we're going to be left behind, and therefore, you know, our brands that we export to the world are going to be perceived or not going to have that advantage that we seek.
And what do you think are the benefits to a company to take a more proactive approach when it comes to embracing renewable energy?
Well, ideally, you know, your brand story is incredibly important. Ideally, if you're first, you get the first mover advantage. You're saying, look, we are totally renewable. You know, that's going to be a great statement. Statements around your carbon footprint are going to be becoming more and more important. So anything that improves your credentials, you know, on the stage and as a corporate citizen, are going to help the value of your brand.
Stuart, I want to ask you a little bit about this battery, this magic battery which has really unlocked the potential. It's been a long time coming. You guys have worked on this for 3 years. Why was it such a priority for Panasonic?
Oh, look, for us, you know, we've you know, obviously had one generation of battery already. We've learned a lot from that generation. And then obviously this is our second generation of battery, but I think we talk about the battery, and the battery is one part of the equation, but actually it's the solution that we put together. So, you know, yes, it is a battery and it has an inverter, etc., but it's the ability to be able to actually deliver demand response, have a platform that allows us to turn these batteries on and off in mass when we want, how we want to. You know, in the future, electric cars may come, or they will. You know, certainly the expansion will grow very quickly. And today, you know, the cycle of energy use may be one cycle, and in 5 years' time, that may change quite dramatically as electric cars become more common, and we might be charging them up in the middle of the night. So having a platform that allows us to have many of these batteries out there, having a partner like Solarcity that actually centrally owns and runs and operates these batteries is a perfect combination. And then the last part of the puzzle is obviously the development around what user interface, what does the consumer actually get out of it, what's the app that we've developed, how do they actually see the benefits of what they've done, and how they've partnered up with Solarcity and developed or delivering, you know, benefits. And probably the overarching is obviously, you know, it is very good for the environment. It's green. It's a way of actually having, you know, energy generation out in the suburbs where people are actually using it, which is actually also very important. So development's it's been a process, and it will continue to evolve and improve, and we'll get better. But this one ticks a lot of boxes that our first generation we learnt from, and then this one, really ticks a lot of the boxes of what we learnt in the first couple of years.
One of the exciting things about today's announcement is that it potentially brings us all one step closer to Jacinda Ardern's very ambitious target of getting us to 100% renewable energy by 2035. Karen, what role do banks play in helping us to achieve this target?
So I think Mark Carney kind of kicked it off in 2015 to a large extent, when he actually highlighted to the world that climate risk is financial risk. And that's the way people need to start thinking about it. And so from a bank's perspective, what does a bank do? Well, a bank helps individuals, companies, and actually the economy manage financial risk. So from our perspective, it's a very natural step for us to think about this, not just in the context of what do we do as an organisation, but actually how do we help shift the way an economy thinks about the migration of capital to much more intergenerational and cleaner technologies. So for us, working with Solarcity in this example was a natural application of that. Taking the IP that we've developed in funding many other things, from houses all the way through to substantial other forms of power generation, and saying how would you apply this with a new form of technology just to make it more accessible to individuals. And that's the kind of structure that we've come up with. So we see it as part of the obligation we have to work across this economy to reduce the financial risk that really does flow out of climate risk.
And I think a recent study the bank was involved with, the Commission, suggested that early action on climate change could save our economy as much as $30 billion.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, and that was one of the interesting things that came out of the work that we did with Vivid Economics and EY, was just how much the difference was in terms of taking that early action versus the delay. And that's because there's only one way that carbon prices are going, and that's up.
Andy, it's obviously something that's very close to your heart and something you're very passionate about. We talk about this goal of 2035, 100% renewable. Can we get there, and what's it going to take for us to get there?
I think as a nation, what we can see now is that you only need to put solar on a small island equivalent, really, across the country to get to a place where the nation has enough power to get to 100% renewable. Financing, as Karen said, is key, because it allows you to deliver that sunshine as a service to New Zealanders, so no one's left out. And that's really important, right, in any community when you're facing such a big challenge, is that you've got the ability to work together on a local level. And powering homes locally is just a lot more efficient and just makes more sense. It's 25% more efficient to power your home from your own rooftop than it is to buy it from a lake down south. It's just a fact. So I think it today and developed is a solution that we believe gets us there within 10 years. So we have the beginnings of a plan right now, and it is just the beginning. Solar's not, as Stephen said, it's not a silver bullet on its own. It's going to take things like hydrogen, farming, and different approaches to farming, but it certainly puts us on the right path.
Stephen, you talk about farming. There's some industries and businesses that are going to find a move to renewable energy tough, agriculture being one of them. How do we need to support these industries in transitioning to renewable energy while having a minimal impact on their business?
Well, I think as a country you've got to work with them. You can't over-regulate so they go out of business. So it's going to be a transition, but I think providing data is going to be a big part of this. So I've just seen a piece of data recently which relates to the leaders and who are the laggards. So, but working with them to actually improve is the way to do it. Collaboration.
And Jeff, I mean, is it possible to, as a business, conduct yourself in an environmentally sustainable way while still looking after your
sector to move to solar? Look, there may be examples of that, but there may also be examples where it's a great sector to move to solar. If you look at some quite remote properties or parts of properties that don't currently get electricity to them at the moment, that need pumps for water, pumps for irrigation and things like that. So I think there'll be a lot of benefits here for agriculture.
Any other sectors you think will be particularly impacted by a move to solar or renewable energy?
Well, probably that one I mentioned before, brands, consumer brands, particularly in the food and beverage space, that may help us with a competitive advantage offshore and our brand stories offshore. So that's got to be a first cab off the rank as well. Wine.
Stuart, you were talking before about the battery and the advances that have got us to this point. Can you explain, I guess, for consumers or potential customers in particular, why is it such a game changer?
Well, I think it gives the one thing that unlocks that household. If you don't put a battery in, maybe you can reduce your use from your house maybe around 20% or 30% if you're lucky. But with a battery, you can get up to 50, 60, 70% depending on you generating it in the middle of the day when we've probably got excess electricity. So battery is the key to really unlocking the whole solar self-generation puzzle, because without the battery you're really generating electricity when we've probably got enough. But the battery really changes that. You can use it when we need it, and that's the major difference.
Karen, when we look at climate change more broadly, what does leadership look like for a big corporate like Westpac?
Yeah, so we think about it in three ways. The first thing is, what do we do as a large corporate in our own right? And we've been we first measured our carbon footprint here in New Zealand in 2008 and have been focused on setting goals and targets for ourselves ever since then to find ways to reduce it. Now, we've reduced it by over 55% during that time frame. And I would just make the point, not at a cost, actually at an economic benefit, because actually we've reduced things like our electricity bill by roughly $4 million over that point in time as well. So people shouldn't immediately have fundamentally different outcomes. The second point, as we've already talked about, is that what do we do as a bank? Well, we provide capital, and so it's how do we do that, and in what ways do we do that, and how do we support this transition? You've talked a little bit, Stephen in particular, around supporting businesses and industries to transition, and we absolutely believe that as well. The last thing you want to do is create economic shock by all of a sudden just doing that quick pull of the chain. You've got to help people do it, and the pleasing thing is we've spent the last 5 years out there thumping people, going, have you thought about it, have you thought about it, have you thought about it? They're now coming to us and asking questions. So I think there's a real shift in momentum and mindset. And then the third point is we are a large organisation in New Zealand, and so we have a voice, and it's how do you use that voice? So thought leadership, being part of the voice of change. So the CEO Climate Leaders Coalition, being a founding member of that was an important part. We have a sustainable finance conference on next week here in New Zealand. That's all about large corporates and fund managers getting their heads around what is sustainable finance and how do you start to get engaged in understanding the benefit of things like that, backing the UK style climate commission, independent budgets, creating the right kind of policy and framework that allows business and consumers to think ahead and start to adapt and change their business model is fundamentally important.
And I think talking about the sea change, and a question for you, Stephen, is there is going to need to be a real change in people's perceptions. How are we going to get there? How are we going to make people really engage with the concept of solar and understand the importance of moving to renewable energy?
Well, I think the economics. So if we take this product, Solar Zero, the bank provides the money for the lease that puts the solar on people's roofs. They pay a subscription, but the savings they make out of their power bill basically pays for that subscription, and they lock in the price of anti-inflation for the rest of the 20 years. So the price then never goes up, apart from anything they might bring in on the grid. So usually consumers, in my experience over a long time, vote with their pockets. And if they're doing something that's good for the environment and for their kids and their grandkids at the same time, I think we've got the answer.
Andy, I've got a question from Facebook from Deb, who wants to know, we're going to roll out Solar Zero community by community.
To look at how we can employ enough people fast enough to roll this out across the nation. So the industry here is relatively small. So we're spending a lot of time now, both ourselves and with organisations like Callaghan.
The thousands of jobs that could be created.
Green jobs.
If you look in North America currently, where similar schemes have been rolled out, right now in North America, more people are employed in our industry than Google, Amazon and Facebook combined. So you're going to see a massive growth.
It's going to be really important that you guys work together to reach these targets.
Well, right now we work alongside two young independent power companies who've really seen that this technology is quite critical to repowering the nation. So we're hoping that all the power companies look at how they can work alongside each other to look to reach on the plan.
Jeff, Andy refers to it as sort of we're at this climate change tipping point now.
Than ever before. So I think, you know, the generation that's coming through will demand it, and whether kind of people of my kind of era or not accept it, it's going to happen. So
yeah, very exciting.
Do you think that it needs to be led though from the front, from people like yourself and the people on the panel that are in these leadership positions?
Yeah, I would hate to sort of write a deathbed note to my grandchildren, but we've got to do more right now.
And what part, Andy, do you think that, you know, when we're talking, we can talk bigger picture about things like climate change and renewable, but from, I guess, a personal sort of Solarcity point of view, what role do you think solar offers? What part can it play in the solution?
I think solar cap on that price in a way that allows the price of power for future generations to be, in many respects, declining. And I think that the advantage that gives our economy.
And, you know, one of the points Stephen made, Karen, was that people ultimately are sort of voting with their pockets. It's great if we can do something that saves us money but can save the environment at the same time. Is that something you see from a bank's perspective?
Look, absolutely. One of the things that we're very focused on is ensuring that we're supporting the mechanisms that help drive that. And one of the things that we're very conscious of from a market perspective is that right policies, right signals are there to help support and drive that kind of behaviour. So things like the ETS are quite fundamentally important for people here. Yes, you're right, younger generations are coming through and saying, I want to see that shift happen. Actually, they're not yet at the point where they can actually do something tangibly about it, so we have to do it.
I was just wanting to get a last point from each of you, if that's okay, just to finish things up. It's easy for our own lives to actually do our part to get us to 100% renewable and to really make a difference with climate change.
The key thing we need to do is do something, you know, just make a start. Look, sometimes my son comes out, it is quite an overwhelming lecture, but what we can do is make a start and start ticking them off. And thanks to Solarcity and Panasonic, this is a bloody great start for a lot of New Zealand homes and a lot of New Zealand businesses. So you can't kind of take them all on in day one, but you can certainly take a few on and get into it. And you know, just by the look of these battery units alone, it looks like a pretty stunning addition to most households. So you know, I'll be in there first for sure.
Brilliant. Stuart?
Look, I think from Panasonic's perspective, obviously the battery and the whole solar product is key, but it's also not just that. It's actually around your total home usage, energy efficient products. You know, are you putting LED lighting in? Are you actually buying products that are using less energy to start with? So that whole, you know, that whole household usage will certainly help. And then on top of that, if you can put a battery and solar in, it just takes another big chunk off. So, you know, overall products like Panasonic, you know, that are efficient, I certainly think in the future, you know, will help people become more, will use less energy for their household. So it's positive.
Look, I'd reiterate the taking action at the personal level, but also I think sometimes we're too much reliant on change will happen because of fear. Actually, some of the change will happen because people see opportunity, and so storytelling around the really positive moves and the positive impact and the new technologies as they come in and the risk taking and embracing people who are prepared to get out there and actually do something, we need to get much more powerful at that. So it'd be great to see some more positive stories, because we think that actually this economy, there's a lot of...
I think that's the key, is that there's little steps, right, Jeff, that everyone can take to make a big difference to the way in which the nation's powered.
I kind of come at it from an investment point of view, so I'm here as a first investor in Solarcity, and we see about 30 new investments a month, and many of them now are around the year because banks don't normally come in at an early stage. So thanks, Karen.
All got your part to play. I think to that point you raised, Karen, about the fear. You know, we're all a bit scared of change.
You speak to many people. Most New Zealanders see this as the right thing to do, but most people don't know about it right now. So I mean, certainly what we're doing across the next month really is working alongside some of our great partners like Noel Leemings, who are going to allow us to take this technology out to New Zealand and look at how they can make a personal difference on climate change.
Any questions from any of you lot?
Yeah, I've got one.
Yes.
Caroline from Good Magazine. It was quite funny because just this weekend we were planting a vegetable garden and I was test driving an EV and my partner and I were talking about, because I've spoken to Andrew before, and I'm like, we need to get these Solarcity panels on our house. So this is kind of taking it next level. I also live in Waterview, so we are surrounded by council New Zealand housing estates. So it's kind of a real mix. It's kind of like Grayland and New Zealand housing all living in one area. So I guess two questions are, from a consumer point of view, if I want to get one of these, I get solar panels on my roof and I have one of these installed, and then I collect power, and of course I can then release that. So is it a rental scheme too, where you can never actually own one of these? It's sort of more of a national thing. And also, how are you working with New Zealand Housing Corporation in terms of their tenants, in terms of giving them accessibility to this power?
Maybe I'll just quickly summarise that question for people who are watching online. If you, and really, I guess, if you can just talk us through step by step how signing up for Solar Zero actually works.
Yeah, step by step. So you register online, and essentially what Solar Zero delivers is 5 key technologies really in one. So you get a solar system on your roof, you get a battery platform that, as Stuart mentioned, integrates with smart appliances, so it helps you to control your EV when you get one. In the interim, it helps you to control your hot water cylinder, which is a big user of power. Connects with Alexa, which is a new voice-activated platform that allows you to control appliances in the home, which allows you to use power way more efficiently. It also enables you to buy smarter appliances online, which allows you to drive your energy consumption. So the key to getting to a power price which is half what you're currently paying is essentially Solar Zero, because that combination of technologies gets you to that place.
Can you also explain, Andy, how the relationship with the grid works once you move on to Solar Zero?
Yeah, so when you move on to Solar Zero, it gives you that independence, but the ability to control your relationship with power. So that platform delivers around 70% of your energy, sometimes during the summer, all of it, when it's super cheap, and make sure that it sort of powers you through your day at a price which is less than you normally would pay for energy at that moment in time.
And then there's the community commitment.
Yeah, and then there's so important to embrace everyone with a solution that allows everyone to embrace the technology.
And do you want to just address the question around Housing New Zealand?
We don't think that's fair. So we're working with City Council at the moment to look at how this technology can allow those homeowners.
Expand your footprint outside of New Zealand and exporting in some way the unique bits of IP that are part of this, or is it very much just drawing on Panasonic's innovation?
Because the electricity market here is structured in the way it is, so it's been deregulated quite heavily, so we're able to access different revenue streams that other organisations can't, but the platform itself is unique. So certainly internationally, once we've solved climate change here, I think we'll be the first. I think we'll be the first door that people knock on as to how they can unlock. Change always begins at home.
Anybody else? Brilliant. Oh, well, thank you very much for all listening in to this wonderful discussion, and thank you to all our panellists for taking part. We'll just keep you there. We'll just finish up.
Panel. Again, from Solarcity, we wanted to say thank you very much for you taking the time to share your insights. You're passionate about a topic that you know our CEO is extremely passionate about. There is now a light lunch available, so you're more than welcome to stay and have some beautiful food by Vanessa. For media, you can work with myself and Angelina and Thea for any follow-up Q&A that you'd like with any of the panellists. We do have a number of other Solarcity execs here if you do want to understand a little bit more about the product. We've got Gareth, just put Gareth's hand up there. Otherwise, that is really a wrap. But just feel free to come and ask us anything if you need. We'll be here for the next while anyway. So thank you.
Thank you all very much.